Good afternoon, everyone. How are you all this fine Saturday afternoon? Yay! We are thankful for the wonderful weather outside and the coolness of the inside, aren't we? Thank you, the Rialto, for hosting our storytelling event. My name is Eleni. I am the Executive Director at Better Kenmore Community Development Corporation, hosting this day, so thank you for your support. I want to take a moment to thank Angela Chaffin for volunteering to put this on together for us today. Let's give her a hand and applause. Mr. Dwayne Krebs is our MC today, and before we get our program started, I wanted to take a moment to let you know what Better Kenmore is. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit here to help revitalize the Kenmore area, and this is one of the things we do. We hold placemaking events, not just to have a good time, but to show people the good of the neighborhood and the good of the people, and encourage folks to come on back and visit us even when we don't have an event like this. Help us. I encourage you to help us continue being able to do this work by donating to us. There are QR codes all over. We also have a newsletter that you can sign up for, and we would love your feedback. So thank you, and I will now turn it over.
All right. Good to see y'all. We get the privilege of emceeing this today. It was many years ago, about 30, as a matter of fact, that my wife Lisa and I, as we were leaving church one Sunday, what we had become aware of is that our church met in a building that was in a neighborhood, but no one lived in the neighborhood anymore. And when the soul of the church is no longer connected to the soil of the neighborhood, it's not surprising that we no longer have an impact, and we have programs, but we don't have relationships. And so we made a commitment to move back into the neighborhood, which at the time, Summit Lake was the highest crime, second poorest neighborhood in the city, and needless to say, my wife wasn't real excited about the idea of living there. The cool part about that is when you act in courage, it becomes an encouragement to others. And so somewhere along the way, we realized there were a lot of other people who were doing stuff or who cared, but did not feel supported. So we put on an event called Who Cares? And it was a little tongue-in-cheek, but this woman, among probably, it was at least half a dozen other people who started things out of that event. There was probably 70 or 80 of us there. And one of them was Angela Miller, who had just moved back to Kenmore and was really trying to figure out how she could care and make a difference in her community. And I'm going to let Angela come up and share.
So in 2015, I opened the Beacon Journal on a Saturday morning, and I saw a big ad, and it had the bold, "Who cares?" And I thought, well, I do. And I have for a long time, but I don't seem to be able to find an on-ramp. And then underneath it, it said, "Who cares about boarded up storefronts? Who cares about urban blight? Who cares about vacant lots?" I thought, well, I do. And then I read where it was going to be held, the Alpha Center on Wolf Ledges. And I thought, well, it's either a dog kennel or a frat house. And I thought, and then I looked down and Dwayne Krebs' name was there. And I thought, oh, that guy. That guy, an evangelical that I weirdly trust. And I thought about their tagline. Can you say it for me? Doing things together.
Right.
Go ahead. You say it. You say it great.
Doing things together better than we can do alone.
Yeah, but also with the end said, "For Christ's sake."
Oh, yes.
And I thought, well, does he get the double entendre? I bet he doesn't. But now I know it was, So anyway, I decided that I cared. So I got myself up and I went to the Alpha Center, and thankfully no one was in a toga. And they were using something called open source method, which I'd never heard, which consisted of sticky notes, Post-it notes that were this big. And if you cared about something, you wrote what your project was on this Post-it note, stuck it on a wall, and stood there so you could pitch it. And it felt a little bit like the 6th grade science fair, where I had a failed Newton's cradle. that didn't work. And I was trying to convince everyone that it was fine. So I'm standing there by my giant Post-it note, and it said, Kenmore Revitalization of the Business District. And two ladies walked by, Mary O'Connor and Carol Murphy, and we were instant soul sisters. And they said, we want to go with her. We're going to do her project. So we made a date, met on the boulevard, and...
Come on up.
Dramatic pause.
Yeah, that's right.
Dramatic pause.
Hi. I walked here from the transit center because I moved to Cleveland in November. But I was 12 years in Akron. And does anyone know the fastest way to walk from the transit center to Kenmore? One word. Well, maybe two words. Railroad tracks. And it's both the shortest and the most scenic, and it's also kind of, I was glad to have this Kenmore sweatshirt because I was definitely sweating by the time I got here. I did go to Angela's Kenmore because I loved the boulevard the minute I saw it. When I moved to Akron, I thought it was just an incredible place. And I have Carol Murphy, unfortunately, can't be here, so I have a few remarks from her first because she actually wrote her remarks. And we also were told we had a minute, so a minute. Okay, so, hey friends, everyone, Carol says, I'm sorry to say I can't make it to the event. I haven't been feeling great all morning, and just getting there with Kenmore Boulevard closed may be too much to bear. Just say some kind words about an atheist, two lesbians, and a pastor getting shit done, okay? So, if you can mention, I utilize a creative placemaking approach to community building inspired by Angela's energy, Dwayne's invitation to care, and my dear friend Mary's love of community and her architectural expertise. Thank you. When I arrived in Kenmore today, I got some nice wardrobe approval, and that made me happy. And I also got a free bottle of water from a recovery center, and I really needed that water. The Rialto, the brothers, had a very clear vision, and we three, Carol, Angela, and I, were able to help them realize to put that up the marquee, which in a sense lit the way for the changes that came on the boulevard, thanks to Angela. It also was the beginning of my involvement on a couple of projects on the boulevard, I'm happy to say. And, you know, I'll say that I'm a disruptor and a hustler. I'm a hustler. It's true. And I'm a disruptor by nature of what I do, an architect. It's messy. It makes people nervous. It takes a lot of money. It's usually delayed. And I'm a hustler because most of my work was in New York City, which is where it's like, really, come on, time is money. And most things are not. I came to Akron because I wanted to practice an architecture that was more community-based, which means there's not money, and it takes a long time. And what I learned and what I gained and what is my deepest gratitude always for Akron, which continues to be a community that I cherish and I'm a part of, is that it's so not in my hands, and that it's about doing a part, being part of a process, and letting go. But when I look where Kenmore, where the boulevard is now, and like just that incredible picture behind us, it really, I just am so filled and so grateful, you know, both for the wardrobe compliment, the water, and just the spirit of endurance, persistence, and community that exists here. Thank you.
So I wanted to conclude by saying that Mary's drawing of the Rialto marquee, which I hope you appreciate, and Carol's helping me write my very first grant, went to the Akron Community Foundation. Thank you. And the marquee did what it was supposed to do, which was to help galvanize a revitalization. And Interestingly, at Akron Community Foundation at the time was our first executive director, Tina Boyes. So we absolutely are unlikely partners who took shared risk to renew our community for Christ's sake.
And I was supposed to let you know earlier that everything today will be recorded on video and audio, so just be aware of that. Sean Blake, who's very strongly connected to this Rialto Theater, and he's going to talk about exploring Kenmore's past to create its future. And Sean is the president of the Historical Societies and was part of Torchbearers, but mostly he's known as the Kenmore Mayor. So, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, everyone. So the first time I got asked to speak in public was, I think it was 2 years ago when they dedicated the bridge to the North Shore down at Summit Lake. Dan Rice from the Ohio and Erie Canalway Association, he told me 2 days before the bridge dedication, he's like, hey, I got you speaking at the bridge dedication. And I was like, oh. I was like, well, what do you want me to say? And he told me, he said, a lot of politicians try to write speeches down ahead of time, but that's just because they don't know what they're talking about. He says, when I have a speech, I like to speak from the heart. So here I am. I don't have anything prepared, but I'm prepared to speak from the heart for you guys. So my family, I'm fourth generation now. My great-grandfather moved to Kenmore in the 30s, and he built a building that is that way down the boulevard. I'm proud to say one of my friends owns it now. When he first built the building, he opened a jewelry store in the bottom of the building, and then the family lived upstairs until they had enough money to buy an actual house. The house that they then bought down in the Shady Side area is still in my family today, which I'm proud to say that. And my journey started in 1994 when I was, obviously I was born in 94, 96 when I was 2 years old. A man by the name of Cletus Swords had a vision for Kenmore. And he wanted a place where the community could meet and celebrate and hang out. And he wanted to put a gazebo at Shady Side Park. If you work with the city, if you deal with the city, you know you get a lot of no's. It's very easy to get discouraged. It's very easy to get stonewalled. But this man had a dream, and he continued to fight for that gazebo. So when I was 2, in 96, he built that gazebo at the park, and he built most of it by himself. My mom, obviously, I do actually remember the gazebo going up, but that's about all I remember from that time. But my mom said people would stop by, and they would congratulate him, ask him, how he's doing, thank him. But they never once volunteered to help. That man built that gazebo by himself. And my mom, where we lived at, we were very close to the park, and my mom would go across the street and give him water every day, and, support and food, and, anything she could do, she tried to do. Years later, we ran into his daughter, who used to live in the neighborhood, and she was telling me that her dad always spoke of his guardian angel. He said when he was building that gazebo, his guardian angel would come over every day and give him water and food and stuff like that. And here that guardian angel was my mom. So that was kind of a cool to see it come full circle and hear it from the other, from the other side. So being born when I think I did miss the glory days of the 90s in Kenmore. Sounds like you guys had a lot of fun in the 90s. So I kind of had a different perspective on things. It honestly, to be honest with you, I'm going to be real with you guys, it hasn't always been great. I mean, we've had a lot of great things here. We had Rolling Acres Mall, Baptist Temple, Kenmore High School, Young's Restaurant, and it's kind of crazy to see the things fall away, but the reason they did is because they didn't have any more leadership, and that's kind of motivated me to be a leader in the community and to help keep the community going. So, obviously I had the service at a young age, and I got to watch my parents every day as I grew up. They would go across the street and they'd pick up trash in the park. And my dream is for one day for my parents to not have to do that. Unfortunately, it seems like the trash has only doubled and tripled, but maybe one day we'll get lucky and just all the trash will just blow everywhere else, but not in the park, so we don't have to pick it up. But the dedication to my community really came through my parents and just the pride and support and stuff like that. When I grew up, we used to have the carnival down at Prentice Park. And when I got old enough, I worked the carnival. When you first started as a carnival help, you got a shovel and you had to follow the horses around and pick up poop for all 4 days of the carnival. That's how they knew if you were going to make it or not. Eventually, I worked my way up the final year of the carnival. I was the head foreman for the grounds crew, and it was quite an honor for me. Also, pushed me into a leadership position at a young age. And we had our roles. The first years they had to go pick up the poop, and then the people. The police called for more barricades. We got to get more barricades to one part of the carnival. I was able to work with, and I use that experience today, I was able to work the old parade. And it was quite an honor for me to bring the parade back this year. And it was one of the things I'm really proud of. So it's, like I said, the early 2000s, Kenmore was kind of, a lot of businesses had left the boulevard. There wasn't really a whole lot going for it. But one of the reasons that I'm still in the community is because of I can't tell if she's in the crowd or not, but our council person, Tina Boys. She wasn't council person at the time, but right when she came back to the neighborhood, so after college, I ended up back at home, like a lot of us do. There's no shame in that. But I didn't know if I really wanted to stay here or not. And just to have her enthusiasm, energy, mindset, positive attitude, was just amazing, and that's what really kept me around, to be honest with you. And I was able, a couple years ago, there was a need in the community. We had already lost the Kiwanis, and I'll speak about that in a second, but the Historical Society leadership was getting old, and they wanted to retire. And if no one stepped up, we might not still have the Historical Society. And it's been very important for me to work with the Historical Society because I got to see how great Kenmore was. I mean, we had one of everything, and you could go right down to the boulevard and get it, and that was just amazing. And the one theme that I've noticed is just all throughout Kenmore's history, the people here have been absolutely amazing, and I can still attest to that. We still have great neighbors. We have a ton of empty houses that are owned by out-of-state LLCs, and that's a whole nother mess that I don't want to get into, but the people that still live by me are still great people. And just the more you do for the community, the more the community will embrace you and just roll with you and support you. And that's just been absolutely amazing to see that firsthand. And I'm really glad to take the hands of the Historical Society, be a leader. I mean, we got a parade. Everyone I talk to asks me about that damn schoolhouse down there on Wilbeth Road. So we'll probably have to do something with that sooner or later. But I just love the community, and I just really want to support the community. So I have one final story before I walk off the stage. I had a man, and some of you may have known him. He was my neighbor. He went by the name of Richard Cardarelli, and a lot of people called him the mayor of Kenmore. He was very involved. He ran the Kiwanis. When we had the concerts down at Shadyside, he'd be making popcorn. You couldn't go anywhere in this town and not run into Dick. I even just found out that he has a park named after one of his daughters, Lisa Ann Park. Unfortunately, we lost Dick 2020 during COVID. He was a firefighter. We all know firefighters have bad lungs, all the stuff that you got to deal with. But, before he passed away, everyone knew him as the mayor of Kenmore. Shortly after COVID, people started calling me the mayor of Kenmore. So I'm almost wondering if he kind of passed that on to me when he passed away. So whatever I do, I do it for the community. I don't do it for me. But it's been a real pleasure to come up here and talk to you guys and share my experience growing up here in Kenmore. So thank you guys.
So before I bring up our next speaker, I will say this about Dick Cardarelli. It's not often you get to work in the community that you live. And so he was at the Kenmore Firehouse his whole career. But we used to joke around, if he was not sure where something was at, he would drive to his house. And he knew all of Kenmore straight from his house. So as a fire truck, he would respond to a street and then go to wherever the fire was at. the next speaker is a guy who, when Lisa and I moved into our home in Summer Lake 30 years ago, we'd barely been in the house a couple weeks. We were still doing a lot of work on it, fixing it up, and we started getting our mail at the house. And the mailman came and gave us the mail one day, and he started saying, "What are you guys doing? You just moved in here?" And we started to talk, and before we knew it, in 5 minutes, this individual had volunteered to help do construction projects and get us in our house, and he spent weeks helping us out at a time we felt very vulnerable. And that person is the person who's the next speaker, Gary Wyatt, who, if you can start coming on up, Gary has worked for the Postal Service for 30 years and retired. He was a Marine, Reserve Marines, and he's going to talk a little bit about no more crossing the tracks, which he is a good boundary breaker, and I love him like a brother. Thanks, Gary. Let's give a hand for Gary.
Good afternoon. I'm always honored to be amongst great people. I was, me and Dwayne go back, like I said, in the ministry. I was a mailman back there in the Summit Lake area, and did wallpaper painting back in the days, and messed around and been with his ministry for years, and actually he launched me into ministry on the north side. I run the North Hill Community House, which is called He Brought Us Out Ministry, and it's funny because I'm on the North Hill on Howard Street, back again 4 houses from where the Hells Angels was on Ira Avenue back in the day. So you talking about a good lead into the story. I lived in Summit Lake most of my life in the 70s, you know, the early 70s. Well, guess what? On Ira Avenue and all of that area at the end of Kenmore, if anybody in here is 40 and over, no, I got to take it to 50 and over. Y'all remember when the Hells Angels sat right there, the motorcycle club, and it's funny. I'm glad I got some backup in the audience, just so y'all know, and I'm glad we videotaping, so if somebody throws something at me, I know where it came from. But anyway, y'all appreciate these stories because we would actually pick with the Hells Angels back in the day. Dwayne, we would come up through the houses because we like the motorcycles. Vroom, vroom, you know, they would be out there doing their thing. I didn't know about all that racism really stuff. You know what I mean? I didn't know what they was doing back then. So as a kid, you just knew they was mean and that they was chasing you. So we would go like running through there and they be chasing us, calling us the N-word, and we thought that was funny. You know what I mean? We go running for miles, just running back home. But you know what? We knew that we would never tell our mothers and fathers because we wasn't allowed to go over there. You know what I mean? But as a kid, you was curious. Just like my buddy Cody was telling me, I didn't know this, that they used to jump off the Kenmore Bridge in the Summit Lake back in the day. They would jump off the bridge. You know where they got the towpath and all that? They would jump off the bridge. I said, that's what they did out in Kenmore. We just knocked windows and ran on, chased the Hells Angels. So just to put that story to the side real quick, what I'm up here for is no more crossing the tracks. And if you 40 or 50 and over again, you understand what you on this side of the track and I'm on that side of the track. So when Miss Angela called me or texted me, she got a referral through a referral that referred. Somehow my name came up. They should have just asked Dwayne. He would have told them. But anyway, I'm trying to think, what is one of my most memorable stories about Kenmore? You know, and I got to thinking, I said, well, let me think. And so we came up with this, she actually came up with no more crossing the tracks. Well, guess what? The way that came about was in the 70s, y'all know a little bit after immigration, and they was busing, remember they started busing us and, you know, busing kids, black kids and white kids all over the city. Y'all remember that? And so we would come out and started playing like in 74, 75, 76. Y'all started getting black kids out in Kenmore. playing football. Remember at Prentice Park and all of that? We started coming out there and playing, so it's kind of funny because we would win games, right? We all had our little red on. Yeah, they'd be right there. I didn't realize that. I think that's the 224 leg. What leg is that? That yeah, right there, and that's in front of the little field house. And so we would come out, play games, and most black kids back then, you was pretty good, because if you came to Kenmore, you could either run, or you could hit hard. You know, meaning hit hard, meaning like we would like win the game, and you know, all the people would be happy Kenmore was winning games, because we mixed now. We got black running backs, we got middle linebacker black dudes, you know what I mean? And the white dudes did the linebacker stuff, the linemen and all of that kind of stuff. And the little black dudes, we was kind of fast at more like the safety stuff. But what I really wanted to tell y'all, the reason why we was fast is because once the game was over and we won, people changed. It would be a whole nother group of young people, not y'all. It was a whole nother young people that would chase us back to whence we came from, which was y'all going back across the railroad tracks. That's where we came up. So we would in the game, and then y'all remember the custard stand, they would let us go get an ice cream so we can calm down, cool down a little bit, because we did get a reward for winning the game. So we would go over there and get our ice cream. So if you was from the west side area, you would either run up East Avenue, or if you was from the south side area, Summer Lake, you would run down Kenmore Boulevard. So they would chase us. It would always be a group. So once you got up East Avenue, you know, like the 77, we would turn around because you couldn't cross them tracks. You couldn't cross the tracks. So the other part of the story, if you was from the Summer Lake area, you would book down Kenmore Boulevard. We just be running. Helmets, hats, and everything. And once you got across the bridge, where Cody and them would jump off, you would turn around by the bus station, because y'all wouldn't. Did I say y'all? I'm sorry if some of y'all was involved in that, because y'all is my age. I see a couple faces out there. A couple of y'all is my age. And so we would turn around and be ready to fight. So I said all that to say this, that I'm just amazed. And because of the, you know, Kenmore has always had great leadership in Akron, and a lot of great people came out of Akron. Kenmore became a melting pot in the 80s and 90s. Of course, we had one of the longest standing mayors in America. I was just out at Pepperdine at an inner city urban conference at Pepperdine University, and I ran into a guy that was on the panel. He said, man, is that guy Don, I said Pasquale, that's how old he was. He said, is he still the mayor in Akron? I said, just about. Just about, but he had remembered Mayor Pasquale when he was on the, you know, over the mayors. But I just wanted to say that in 2000 and something, a lot of that ended. You know, even though we still got pockets, that's gonna be like that until Jesus come back. People gonna be the way they are, and it's just, hey, racism is all over the world. That's just how that is. But the fact that even Akron, I am 59 years old, and I retired from the post office, military, Navy. We was the Navy Marine Corps. No, he had it right. We started off doing toys for tots and stuff. But I am so happy, like my brother said, to be a part of Akron. I could have retired, left out of here, and, you know, moved to Florida to the 55 and up neighborhood. Well, guess what? Before Horrigan left, he said, you know, we're going to do a tax abatement so we can start helping people stay here. You know what I mean? And I am so honored to be an Akronite. You know, I still travel a little bit all over the world, different places. I am so glad to say that I am from Akron, Ohio. I don't care if it's from Kenmore. You know, I done met people from all over this country, and to be a part of an Akronite and to just represent, you know what I mean? Because we all went through it. And here we are today. You know, I was so honored when Miss Angela asked me to tell the story, because I know people would appreciate it. I knew they would appreciate at our age now to be able to tell a story that at one point in life we would fight. You know, now we hugging, we putting in money. I mean, like she said, a nonprofit. I got a nonprofit too, and people support nonprofits. When you're doing good, you know what? People support that. I think about Dwayne, how he left his firefighter job and came from Cuyahoga, which we used to call Caucasian Falls. He the one that started me doing that. And I used to say it in the churches when I would go speak, and they would get a kick. I said, I got that from Dwayne Krabs. But anyway, for him to come, and then we did ministry, and we have did a lot of churches around Ohio where we was able to embrace all races and become what we have become today, a melting pot. So I just want to say thank you. I'm honored. I had no idea that I would be telling. I used to tell Mayor Pasquale that story all the time. Here we go running up East Avenue. But man, I am so honored that when we run the 5Ks through here, it's a wonderful thing. So I want to say thank you for the change, and that, you know what? No more crossing them tracks. Amen.
So grateful for Gary. You cannot export what you don't produce. And Gary took his childhood experience and welcomed us into Summit Lake, and I'm so grateful that I didn't have to run across the tracks.
I'm just looking for a, do you have a microphone down there, Dan?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I am gonna, the next speaker is going to talk about the invention of the silver screen, and her name is Jan Williams, and I'm not going to steal her thunder because she refused to tell me who she was. She said, it's in my story and you'll ruin it. So Jan Williams, the mystery is about to be unveiled. Let's have a hand.
I hope the microphone works. If you can't hear me, give me a signal and I'll try to change my position. My name is Jan Williams. I taught at Kenmore High School for 40 years. Many of you out here might have been students of mine. The school's motto was pride in achievement. Unfortunately, I have to say was pride in achievement. And I think my father-in-law deserves to be proud of his achievement. The story of the Hollywood silver screen begins in Kenmore with Harry Coulter Williams, my father-in-law. Hopefully many of you in the audience already know a lot of my story. He was born in Kentucky and moved to Akron in the early 1920s. He hopped on a freight train and he traveled with the hobos to get here. While working as a projectionist at the Majestic and the Norca theaters in Akron, he noticed a need to improve the painted bedsheet screens that were being used at the time. He devised a silver coating that would provide better reflection. He coined the term silver screen that is still used as the symbol for the Hollywood film world. His screens were used in theaters throughout the United States, but one of his frequent customers was the U.S. military. He shipped screens to military bases all over the world, so many of the training films were viewed on Williams screens, made in Kenmore. He held a record for the largest solid seamless sheet of plastic and was listed in the Guinness Book of World Records. He made special screens for the talkies by poking small holes in the screen to avoid a muffled sound from the speakers behind the screens. He also created the first CinemaScope and 3D screens. One of the Warner Brothers, I don't know which one of the Warner Brothers met with Harry at his office in Kenmore, preparing to set up playing a 3D film at the Civic Theater. Yes, one of the Warner Brothers was right here in Kenmore. Mr. Williams owned a section of Kenmore Boulevard where he created screens. The Hibernians shared part of that building, and First Glance is housed there now. So all these kids that are doing stuff at First Glance are walking on floors where my father-in-law made silver screens. He also owned a boathouse on the west side of Summit Lake where he built screens. When VCRs became popular and TV channel selections improved, there was less demand for large movie screens. So Harry began making plans to create retractable awnings for motorhomes. He passed away in 1973 before starting that new business. When you're outside the Rialto as you leave, check out the ticket booth. It's named after Harry Williams. Thank you.
The next speaker is Sarita Fuashi, who is a lifelong Akron resident, has 2 daughters, and she works at University Hospital as a chef and also a medical coder, and she's going to tell a story about the house on Chester, a story of friendship. So come on up, Sarita.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Especially as you know her, Miss Angela Chafin or Miss Angela Miller, but I know her as Miss Angie, the lady with the garden. So this is my story of Kenmore. As it was said that I grew up in Akron. I grew up on Glendora, right across the street from Bookdale's track. So I'm a West Sider, Rankin, Perkins, Bookdale. I went to culinary school, graduated from there. Didn't quite work out as being a chef because I ended up being a mom, and as you know, a chef has to eat, sleep, and breathe at their job. And then so I went back to school, became a medical coder. I'm now the lead OBGYN coder for university hospitals. I'm a clinical documentation specialist. I specialize in professional coding. I'm a certified evaluation and management coder. I specialize and I'm certified also in obstetrics and gynecology, which is my favorite specialty. Of course, that's why I'm the lead. But this story is going to I gave you the clean version because I didn't know if like kids would be in the audience besides my daughter, but she's 16 and she knows this story because she was actually the one that's in the story that came with me. So I'm going to get started. My best friend has lived in her home for over 10 years, during which some of those years she eventually befriended her neighbor, Miss Angela Chafin Miller, better known as Miss Angie. Miss Angie always had a very nice house and ended up turning both her front and backyard into a full garden. She grew the best kale I've ever tasted in my life. To this very day, no joke, her kale was like phenomenal. Like when I ran out, it's like, okay, so when do we go back and harvest more? Because it was amazing. That's how I came to know of Miss Angie, through the fruits of her labor. In 2023, I decided, since the pandemic changed the economy and my plan to move out of state was going to cost me far more than what I initially budgeted for, I decided it was time to purchase my first home and become a homeowner after renting for the last 20 years. I have been renting since I graduated from high school in 2003 in June. I left for college in August to PA in Pittsburgh, and I've been a renter ever since. And I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would be owning a home in Kenmore, let alone Akron, or just being here in Ohio. It was not for me. My goal was not to buy a house in Kenmore, let alone Ohio for that matter. I wanted to move to a warm weather climate, at least had more warm weather at least majority of the year, if not all year round. During the road to home ownership, I would constantly talk to my best friend about what areas I wanted to live in, what I was looking for in a house, and wanted to be closer to family and friends since I've lived outside of Akron for 10 years. So before I bought Miss Angie's house, I lived in Streetsboro for about 4 to 5 years, and then from there, Medina, Cuyahoga Falls, anywhere but Akron, anywhere. So then one day, I made a joke stating, what if Miss Angie moved and sold me her house? Then we could be neighbors. But my best friend knew that Miss Angie wasn't moving for a few more years, at least according to the conversation she had between her and Miss Angie. One Easter Sunday, which was in Easter Sunday 2023, I will never forget it. While I was in the middle of cooking Easter breakfast and dinner, because again, I'm a chef, so I can do simultaneously. I don't cook for a living, but I cook for fun, and I cook for people to enjoy my food. And that's where my reward in. So I don't feel like it necessarily went to waste, my degree. But anyway, so one Easter Sunday, I was in the middle of cooking Easter breakfast and dinner. I received a FaceTime call from my best friend. Nothing out of the ordinary for me, as we usually cook together for the holidays, whether together in person or over FaceTime. When I answered her call, she was full of excitement, but it was hard for me to make out what she was saying because the service by her house isn't the greatest. There is absolutely a dead zone of service in Kenmore, if you have not noticed. I saw she was in her car, but the video kept freezing. During the times her video would freeze, the only thing I could make out was, come over to my house, Miss Angie is selling her house. I'm pretty sure she gave me some backstory as to how she found out, but those were the most important words I got out of her FaceTime conversation. Side note, since there's only my daughter in here and she's 16, there were a lot of bleeps and bloops of, get your so-and-so over here right now because Miss Angie is selling her house. That is what I heard. And nothing else mattered. I stopped everything I was doing. Didn't care if breakfast or dinner was going to get ruined. I told my youngest daughter to get herself together ASAP as I ran to find my shoes. Dinner could have turned into charcoal, and I didn't care in that moment. Before I knew it, we were arriving at my best friend's house, and she gave me the full scoop. Sure enough, Miss Angie was selling her home, and she gave me the grand tour. I absolutely fell in love with her home, and I knew instantly it was for me. Everything I had been praying to have in my home, I found in hers. The bonus was that I'd be living right next door to my best friend. Literally, her driveway is on the other side of my house. Miss Angie's, one day during the process of me buying Miss Angie's house, I ended up talking to her about something I was going through when she asked me how I was doing. I don't know what made me tell her about what I was going through, but it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Come to find out, she had been in the very same scenario, and she gave me some wonderful advice on how to handle things. I honestly thought she wouldn't be able to relate to what I was telling her, and what I was going through was far and few between, but I was so wrong. I could have sat and talked to her for hours. It was like God sent me someone who had walked my path and been in my shoes to show me I wasn't alone, nor was I the only one to ever experience what I was going through. From then on, Miss Angie would check on me, and I would check on her. I could call and ask her questions, get her advice or opinion on something. She'd invite my daughters and I over to her place to go swimming, for lunch, or come over and hang out. She would come over and hang out with my best friends and our friends, sharing wine and having a good time. Miss Angie wasn't just a stranger selling me her home. She became part of the little family I put together. We may not talk every day, but when we do talk, it's like we never stop talking to each other. We just pick up right where we left off. Miss Angie always has something exciting going on to tell me about, introducing me to different people, and even schedule lunch dates, which I love that we schedule things. Since I have ADHD, no lie, I have ADHD, so my mind is everywhere. And if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't count. So, Miss Angie may have started off as a stranger to me, but the house on Chester ended up making us family. It's very rare that people connect in this type of situation, and I'm glad to have been a part of this rare experience that turned out to be not only what I wanted, but also what I needed. A mother figure, a grandmother figure, a genuine friendship that will remain for the rest of our lives. Written with a smile on my face and a cheer in my heart for such a wonderful, kind-hearted, and amazing woman, Miss Angela Chafin-Miller.
Our next speaker is going to be Dolores Reeves, and she said, "I was born in Kenmore, and I'm probably going to die in Kenmore." And she is the owner of Reeves Cake Shop, a bakery that she was working at this morning. And just to let you know, she has been a resident in this Kenmore community for 92 years. So I think that's pretty impressive. Come on up, Dolores.
And she can walk up those steps. I couldn't.
Well, my memory isn't as good as it used to be, so I'm going to read this. I have strong roots in Kenmore. My maiden name was Bachtel. My grandparents had a farm, 40-plus acres, which ran from where Kenmore High School is located almost to Manchester Road. It was called the Whitner Farm. There were about 5 or 6 other farms in Kenmore. I was born on Silvercrest Avenue in Kenmore, and it was a great neighborhood to grow up in. We lived on 3 city lots, so we had a goat for milk, and I don't know if you've ever tasted goat milk, but it's terrible. We had to put chocolate in to drink it. We had chickens, rabbits, and a fish pond. My father died 4 months before I was born. My mother raised us 6 kids, and there wasn't any public assistance to help her. My mother would take eggs from the chickens to the Schofield grocery store on 16th Street. That's where Showcase Meats used to be, and she would trade it for groceries. Kenmore had several other small stores too. It was during the Great Depression, so everyone was poor, but the kids didn't realize it. We played games like hopscotch, hide and seek, marbles, so forth, and played in puddles of water after a rain. Coca-Cola used to send a card to all the families for 6 Cokes. We really looked forward to it. Each one of us got one, and it was the only soda we got all year. On the corner of East Avenue and Battles Avenue, Mr. Battles had a small farm in which he raised prize-winning Dutch rabbits. Battles Avenue was named after him. Up the street on East Avenue was a restaurant called the Village Restaurant, known for their chicken dinners. They raised their own produce on a lot of land they had behind this restaurant. I went to Smith School, Reimer School, and Kenmore High. At Smith School, we had fun sled riding down the steep hill beside the school. Smith had a Christmas program with Santa Claus there. Little did I know that Santa was my mother, and I didn't recognize her. In high school, there wasn't a cafeteria, so we had to bring our lunch and eat in the auditorium called Room 49. A couple of boys would roll pennies down the aisle to bug the teacher in charge. And then there were some that walked down to Isley's on the boulevard. What good skyscraper cones they had. Since we had to bring our lunch, I would stop at the bakery where my parent worked and get meat and bread and make a sandwich for lunch. My parents had a bakery, Bachtel's Bakery, in the 1920s and 30s, but I think it was a lot earlier than that because we have a bakery truck with license plates that says 1916 on it. Later, my mom worked at White House Bakery in Kenmore, owned by Harry Fishman. On one very busy Saturday, when I was 12 years old, I went to see my mom at the bakery, and Harry put an apron on me and pushed me out and put me to work because one of his cashiers hadn't come into work. I made 35 cents an hour. We still use one of the mixers he had in our current bakery. My older brother, when he was young, would visit the bakery and when my parents had it, and then stroll down Kenmore until he spotted a couple going into the movie theater. He would then follow them in like he belonged with them because he knew kids got in free with their parents. My brother Wellman was once called the youngest store owner in Kenmore. With the help from my mother, he was able to open a model shop at 979 Kenmore Boulevard. One day, he found out somebody had broken in overnight. My brother-in-law got his machete, and we went the next night and waited. Soon we heard someone coming in. What a surprise when they saw us and the machete. My mother came and talked to the boys who were afraid the police would be called. They promised they would never do anything like that again, so my soft-hearted mother said, okay. Years later, one stopped by to thank my mother for that, and he grew up to be a good person. When I was growing up, Kenmore was a busy place with lots of stores. 2 hardwares, 2 drugstores, a jeweler, 2 florists, Griffith's Dry Good, 5 and 10, Brown's Meat Market, Acme, and A&P Grocery, and the bakery where I got that first job when I was 12. There was also a Ford car dealership called Hull Dobbs. This is where the Subway and Family Dollar are currently located, and before that was the Kenmore Sparkle Market. The streetcar ran down the center of Kenmore from Barberton to downtown Akron. About 1949 or 48 or 49, the streetcar stopped running. The streetcar ties were removed and taken to Cove Avenue, which is off Manchester Road. 2 houses were built with the ties. At least one of them is still standing. When the streetcar was taken out, cars used to be able to park in the middle of the street where the streetcar ran. And our city building was where the library is today. It houses the fire department, Well Baby Clinic, First National Bank. On the 2nd floor was a library, a watch repair, and a dentist, Dr. Woods. He retired after 45 years as a dentist. After he retired, his son called his equipment museum pieces. Also, I should mention, back in those days, they used to sharpen their own needles, and I think he sharpened his and left a little prong in it because it sure hurt. In 1928, Akron annexed Kenmore. It was thought that they wanted our new fire engine. And I have to mention my cousin was a fire chief in Kenmore. There's a picture of him somewhere. And he was really heavy, fat you might call it. So one time my brother and I got a pair of his pants and each one stood in one leg for Halloween. Oh, there's many more stories about Kenmore which make it unique and great place to live and grow up. And also, if you want a good piece of cake, just come over to our shop.
Our next speaker is Sherry Carnahan, and she's an award-winning children's book author and the owner of Total Office Inc. And her book that really gave her the start was Molly Gets Her Wheels, which is a great story. I don't know that she's telling that today, but we welcome her up as she shares about living on the wild side.
Yep. And by the way, if you haven't had any Reese's cakes, it's my favorite, Italian cream. Okay, hope like it. So my story is about a very special lady that lives here in Kenmore. She is very well loved, and as he said, the title is Living on the Wild Side. There once was a little girl named Frances Geisman, better known today as Fran Kitchen, who lived in Kenmore and dreamed of being a veterinarian. That never came to be. However, when she was 18 years old, she took in an orphan baby robin that a neighbor had found. She went to Kenmore Library and researched all that she could about robins so that she was sure to take the best care of this little one. She then raised the little bird to adulthood and eventually releasing it back into the wild. After rehabilitating that first robin, Fran found another animal to help, and then another and another, and soon she was hooked on wildlife. By 1963, Fran was establishing herself as the first wildlife rehabilitator in Ohio. She is known for rescuing, rehabilitating, releasing tens of thousands of orphaned or injured wildlife back into the wild. In 1988, she officially founded the nonprofit Operation Orphan Wildlife Rehabilitation, Inc., and in 1999, she received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Ohio Wildlife Rehabilitation Association. In 2001, her work with wildlife earned her a spot alongside Bob Evans and Johnny Appleseed in the Ohio National Resource Hall of Fame. And now for a wild story, rescue story. Any time spent with Fran, and you will learn that she has a ton of rescue stories that she likes to share, and some are pretty wild. One such story comes to my mind that I would like to share with you. Now keep in mind, when you are visualizing this, that Fran is just a little thing. She's only about 4 feet, 11 and a half inches tall, and 100 pounds. And the story is the pool party. This story goes back to the late 1980s. Fran had just finished unloading her camper from the Memorial Day camping trip. She showered, got ready for bed, and was looking for a really nice evening alone, relaxing evening, something that she seldom gets to do in the summer when she's rescuing animals, and this was no different. Just as she got comfortable on the couch, the phone rang. On the other end of the line was a frantic voice of her neighbor Marcy, telling her that a deer had fallen into the neighbor's in-ground swimming pool and could not get out. Fran went into rescue mode, jumping off the couch, running upstairs 2 at a time, ripping off her pajamas, and coming back down, putting clothes back on. She hollered to her husband as she ran out of the house, "Deer in pool," and off she went. She reached the pool a couple houses away. The yard was already filled with spectators. She heard Marcy suggest to her husband, "Just jump in the pool and get the deer out." And Fran nixed that idea right away, and she said, "Well, unless he wants to be sliced to pieces by the deer's hooves or drown, that's not a good idea." Instead, Fran ran home to grab a capture pole from her house, thinking that she would simply snag the deer and put it into the shallow end and it would walk out. But that didn't happen either. Just as she returned, the exhausted deer went into a belly roll, and the belly and legs up in the air, and it was sinking to the bottom. Fran instantly dropped to her knees, grabbed her hand out and grabbed the deer's ear and pulled it to her. Then she grabbed the other ear and pulled it to her, and then lifted the deer out as much as she could and laid it on top of her. Then Bill came running in, grabbed the deer's legs. The deer kicked him, and he went across the yard, and he fell down. Then he came back, grabbed the legs again, and while they were both holding the deer, Fran hollered out, "Someone get me a pillowcase and duct tape." The pillowcase went over the deer's head to calm her down, and they hog-tied the legs with duct tape. Then 4 grown men and Fran carried that deer into a pinto. And anybody who remembers a pinto, you can imagine what that looks like. Once they reached the release site, they pulled the deer out of the car and faced the deer towards the woods. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, they cut the duct tape, took the hood off of the deer, and ran. When the deer stood up, she was mad. She looked towards the woods, but not before turning around and giving them a piece of her mind by stomping her foot snorting, grunting, and bellowing out at them, and then she turned and ran into the woods. Afterwards, Fran said she could smell the sweet smell of success. After all, it was just another day for her, and no one got hurt. Fran definitely lives on the wild side, and this is just one example. I am so proud to call Fran one of my very best friends. She has a heart of gold, not just for animals, but for people too. And for 80 years, she's lived in Kenmore and is a true treasure in the neighborhood that expands far beyond the city limits. She, like many others that call Kenmore home, is making a difference in the world, and so it should be, because Kenmore is a true treasure in itself. I, for one, am proud to call it my primary home for 66 years and honored to tell this story for you. Happy Bicentennial, Kenmore. Thank you.
And our last speaker of the afternoon is Sam Chestnut, who's going to talk a little bit about Kenmore's indigenous past, present, and future. He's the founder of the Lodge Approach, which is an educational approach for non-natives to learn about native culture. And he's also, I think, the founder of the Lippman School. Is that correct? And the head of the Lippman School. And for 14 years, they've had a relationship with the North Cheyenne tribe and have brought First Peoples Day here to Akron. And so let's welcome Sam to the stage.
Thank you. First, I just want to say what a treasure it's been and an educational experience for me to learn of these wonderful stories and people in this beautiful and important neighborhood of Akron. I've lived in West Akron for 30 years, but I'm originally from Seattle, but my whole adult life is here. And the story ends up in Kenmore, but it's about a 50-year story. It's the story of a relationship between my family and the Northern Cheyenne people in Montana. My father, Steve Chestnut, was their attorney in the middle 70s, and that's where the story begins. He was hired by the tribe to overturn a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision that had gone against the tribe, where they had entered into coal leases that were going to strip mine their reservation. And the tribal members had no idea what they were getting themselves into until someone took them to see a strip mine, and they realized that the decision they had made to enter into these coal leases would ruin their land and actually ruin their traditions. So my father was hired as a young attorney. He was, I think, 34 years old in 1975 to go to the U.S. Supreme Court and argue this case to help overturn that negative decision. And he had been an attorney for about 3 years, and that's a really wonderful story. I'm not going to tell that whole story, but he ended up going to the Supreme Court, arguing the case, and winning 9-0, overturning that decision that would have ruined their reservation. So that led to a 50-year relationship between the Chestnut family in Seattle and the Northern Cheyenne people. My father is no longer with us, but my brother remains their tribal attorney. And I spent time as a child on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation because of a friendship that developed many years ago. It opened my world and an understanding of what America meant for Native people and what this land means for the people who are still here, whose ancestors were here before all of us and before there was a Kenmore established and an Akron established. And when I became a school leader, I wanted students to understand what I had experienced by bringing them to the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, which we've been doing at the Lippman School for about 14 years now. Very shortly after then, we decided a relationship is about reciprocity. So it's not enough for us to go to your home, you should come to our home. So for about 12 years now, Northern Cheyenne tribal members, students and elders and educators and cultural leaders have come to Akron every fall. And we began shortly thereafter walking a very important path called the Portage Path. There's a road here called Indian Trail. I'm sure you all know the road Indian Trail. That's the Portage Path. That really important 8-mile path between two waterways, the Cuyahoga River and the Tuscaroras River, connected major watersheds, the Great Lakes watershed and then the Gulf of Mexico through these water systems. It was a really terrifically important a place of native gathering. There were many, many tribes here on that path before there were white people, using that path as a path of trade and all kind of living spaces, culturally significant spaces. We've lost much of that history, but we know through archaeology, and even archaeology in this area, that there was a ton of activity of many tribes on that path. So where that brings me full circle to Kenmore is about 7 years ago, I founded a nonprofit with some Northern Cheyenne tribal members and family members and some local educators to bring Native learning to other people, because there were many adults in our community here in Akron who wanted to learn from what started as just a family connection and then a school connection to this learning opportunity. And that's where I met Angela Chaffin, Angela Miller, I knew her at the time as, who led me to Mary O'Connor. And Mary O'Connor owns land on the adjacent Indian Trail, and is gifting that to the Lodge approach, for which we're hoping to build a Native learning space. And we don't know exactly what that will be, but we know that what has happened in my own life, and for anyone I've brought to the reservation or those who've engaged in learning here with Native people, you realize that Native wisdom has an ancient wisdom connected to land that most of us have lost. And in fact, when we built these cities on this land, we disconnected that ancient wisdom from the people who brought that wisdom forward, who are the wisdom keepers of how to learn and be in tune with the land, and not in an appropriation sort of way. We're not trying to become Native. I'm not Native. I'm not trying to become Native. But what we have done in America is we've lost our sense of what the earth can do for us in terms of learning, in terms of healing, and in terms of living in harmony. So what we hope to do in this space and on this land is bring Native people from all over the country to be in residence here, to share their wisdom with us in a place where likely their ancestors were traveling and trading with other tribal members. In fact, the Northern Cheyenne people, who are Algonquin speakers, they trace their roots to this region. The tribes of this area were Algonquin speakers. They migrated from Canada to the Great Lakes over and then to the west, to Montana and Wyoming, etc. When they came back here, we did our first walk on the Portage Path. Burt Medicine Bowl, his name is Sitovats, which means appears. Burt Medicine Bowl, who's a Northern Cheyenne tribal elder, cultural leader, and educator, when he walked with his students who were dressed in regalia on that path and sang with the drum, it's probably the first time a group of Native people had done that in, who knows, maybe centuries. He said, we brought the spirits back to this path on this day with us. They were happy and they were dancing with us. So we hope to continue to bring people who are practicing their Native traditions today, and to help connect us all to that ancient wisdom, and perhaps that'll bring about a more enlightened, harmonious experience for us here in Akron and in Kenmore along that ancient Portage Path.
Really appreciate that. Unless Angela is planning on coming back up to...
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Well, just thank you for being here today. And what a gift to hear each other and share each other's stories, and to be in Kenmore on this 200th anniversary of Akron. So thank you for being here. How about applause one more time for all the speakers?